Crying while driving, oh what a day. Crying while driving, you're on your way. Oh, crying while driving. You're crying while driving.
We had your partner on the show last month who was kind enough to walk us through the history of House of Codec, which you two were part of building from the ground up. What success stories or moments have stuck with you from your work with House of Codec?
This is gonna sound very, I don't know, but the day I came up with the name of House of Codec, it's like I can be a little bit superstitional or whatever you call that. And the day I came up with that, with the name of House of Codec, it was like 3-day period, and like I just wanted to do something. Like I just wanted to do something art related. I wanted to create like a collective. I wanted to create this thing, but I need to give it a name. And I know like the house comes from like the Bat House movement, but also like seeps into the ballroom scene in a way or another as well. Codec is just like a computer term. It's just like a thing for audio and video. Like I'm sure that you both know it because of what you do, so I don't have to explain that part to you. But for those listening that might not know what a codec is, it's technically it's a device that transcribes data to be playable. So like if you ever wonder, how do videos happen now? How do people put videos now in YouTube? So technically they have to encode that video as in a specific codec so you can play on that website. So it can play on our TV, so it can play on our phone, so it can play anywhere. Movie theaters have their own codec that they have to follow very strictly for large format like that. And then like another explanation of a codec that's not a video can be an audio file, like an MP3 or a WAV file. And then JPEGs for images and PNGs. A GIF. You say GIF, not GIF. GIF. I'm a digital media person. I will fight you on that. But that was an achievement. But also, the day that we were like, let's try to do this thing. Also felt very like another one of those moments where it's just like you are doing something that's like altering the future, and in a good way, obviously. But the one of the accomplishments that I always come back to is the first day we opened the shelter. It was just me, because everybody was divided. There were like 3 events happening to benefit House of Codec that day. It's also World AIDS Day, and we opened December 1st, 2021. The stable was doing a fundraiser for us. There was another fundraiser happening somewhere else in the city, and some other people couldn't be with me because they school finals and stuff like that. So it's just me in the shelter. It's 6 p.m. and I'm like standing in like front of the door, like literally standing in front of the door of like kind of like expecting it to happen like in the movies where like someone knows that you exist and they just come in and they knock. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's not like that. We had 2 clients lined up. So I was just kind of like waiting to see who was going to be the first one to show up. Mm-hmm. And here comes the first person, and I'm like, it was just like, this is real. This is real. There's no turning back from this point ever. Very determined like that. And I did the client's intake, and I showed them their room. I gave them the key. And as soon as I gave them the key, they were like, okay, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm like, I was like literally in shock. I was like, you're going to go to the grocery store? What? And then he comes back. They come back. It's a bag full of candy and a vape. Yeah, and a vape. And I'm like, you can smoke in here. And they're like, it's okay. I'll just go outside. They're like, I like really being in the park. I'm like, cool. And mind you, it's December 1st, 2021. It was warm-ish outside. It was like that December, one of the many Decembers we've had where like we had like 60-something degree weather. It was like one of those days. It was like third summer at that point. And then like 20 minutes after I did that client's intake, here comes the second client that that was also in line to come in that night. And they were like, you have a curfew? I'm like, yes. Is that like, is there a problem? They're like, I work Uber at night. What am I gonna do? I was like, oh, you don't have to worry about that. If it's work, you're good. And they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because they had been in all the shelters where they're like, I can't work because I have a car and like I need to pay that car somehow. And they were actually living in their car for a really long time. And also, unfortunately, doing Uber at the same time. And I'm like, how did you manage? And they told me their whole routine every day to like how to accommodate their car to go from being their home to being someone's carriage per se. And I was just like, holy shit. And I'm gonna like use that silence to be intentional because like that was another huge within an hour and a half from just like being shocked of like the door's unlocked, anybody can walk in, anybody who needs services. Again, obviously it's not like that, but it was just like, this is real. And then our third client gets in a couple of literally a week later, and then we only had 3 clients for like the first 2-3 weeks of our opening. And then here comes Christmas. That was the moment that also I wasn't prepared for, is seeing how many young people on Christmas Day were like, I came out and it wasn't received well. Or I was outed. Like in 2021, I was still hearing that. I was outed. And that's what prompted us to open our wait list. So we opened up a wait list like between Christmas and New Year's, made it live, and within a week we had like 10 entries. First client from the list comes in, cool. Second client from the list comes in, cool. Third client from the list comes in, we're full. And it wasn't until like 2 months after that we then had another room open up because someone moved out. And in between that, a client gets COVID the second they come into our into the shelter. And I just remember that day a neighbor was moving out, and he set off the alarm of the entire building. So we all have to go outside, and I was technically in a different space than where the young people lived. So I'm outside, and here comes my client that got COVID. He was the only one at home. He was like, I've been sleeping all day and this woke me up. And I'm like, maybe you have not had a comfortable enough space to sleep for some time now, which was the case. But then they took a COVID test that same day, and it came back positive. And I'm like, we were right next to each other. No. But the way that we like handled that situation was like made them feel really good, and didn't make them feel like shamed that they had COVID, because they got COVID at work. So we bought like 10 air purifiers, put 2 in their room, asked them to not leave their room, to if they did leave their room, to wear a mask at all times. We asked all of our clients to wear a mask and put 1 air purifier in their room, and then we put 1 air purifier in the bathroom, the kitchen, and all of the common areas. And then we had to report, this is around the time that we still had to report COVID cases. We had to report the COVID case to the Department of Health, and they were like, "You are a shelter? Since when?" And they were like, "We need to come and see your space." And they came in and they were like, "This is the best shelter we've ever seen." That was just like, I wasn't there. It was my partner was telling me the story. They were like, "This is the best shelter they've ever seen." I was like, "Oh God." Around this time, I'm also still working at a hospital. So I work as a research assistant at the Miriam Hospital, and I was just like, "Oh my God!" What would they think if they learned that I'm not doing good with like working in infectious diseases and then actively getting people to get COVID? No, never. That like those early days like felt really huge. Felt like here is something that the community in a way or another has been longing for. I had already been part of conversations in years past, where I just happened to be in the room while the conversations around youth centers and youth shelters and youth spaces were being had, and those conversations not really going anywhere, and just everybody sitting around the room just being like, it was just like, oh, it can't be that hard. It's like 17-year-old Julio thinking. And now it will be hard. For those of you out there listening to me speak about this, building a nonprofit is not easy. To the point almost that I almost want to be like, don't do it. But you have to do it somehow. As much as nonprofit is a very hard sector to be at, it's also a very accessible one. Because fees to become a nonprofit are very low. Like here in Rhode Island, you had to pay like $25 for your registration or something like that. And then it's like $20 every year to like for your annual report to like make sure that you're in good standing. I actually got the letter in the mail for that today. I have to do that. But the session doesn't open until February 1st, so I'm good. But it can be like once you submit forms, like if you are like, yes, I want to do a nonprofit, go ahead and do it. Like I'm not gonna sit here and be like, don't do it. Like there are nonprofits out here that are doing amazing. Just know that depending on where you are, like in a place here like Rhode Island, it's a small state. And we have the most nonprofits in the country. Fact for you, we have like 9,000 nonprofits in this very tiny state. Offline, I will tell you more about that. Yeah. And if you're listening to this and you want to hear the rest of that story later, pull me aside and I'll tell you.
Maybe we'll do a part 2.
There's a lot of nonprofits in Rhode Island, and a lot of the active nonprofits. More often than not, we are fighting for the same pool of money. So that's something to put into consideration, that the pool of funding for nonprofits can be very scarce depending on where you're at. Obviously, the funding sources vary from state to state. There are also private foundations and stuff like that. Always encourage people to donate what they can, whatever they feel like it's meaningful. If it's $1, that's meaningful. If it's $5, that's meaningful. If it's $10,000, that's meaningful. We started Haus of Codec with about $7,000 in the bank. We opened our first when we opened our first space, rent was $2,000 of that. But the landlord we were working with at the time was very happy to work with us. So he waived our rent for a period of time.
How did you find the space?
He was my landlord.
Oh.
He was my landlord. So that's how I found it.
Right place, right time.
Yeah, so we initially wanted to buy a house, but that was too big to grab, too big for our tiny hands to hold. And then we got our eyes on a different property that also my landlord also owns, and we were like, we can try and fundraise, we can try and get the money for it. Sadly, unfortunately, no. Still a dream of mine to see that facility come online one day. Might not be through House of Codec, but I still wanted to come online one day. Maybe, just maybe, if there are enough people to help, that building could become the first rent regulated building in Rhode Island. We don't have one yet. Rhode Island, let's catch up. God damn it. But for those of you out there who do want to do something like this, it will be hard. It will be hard. It will be hard from so many different directions. But don't let that take away from the journey. Because if the journey isn't hard, then it's not worth it. If it's too easy, then it's not worth it. Nothing comes easy. And this sentiment is also coming from my personal life experience as a person of color, and also being a queer person. What? If you've been through shit, you'll know that perseverance is key. And I hope that if you do decide to do this, that you don't do it alone. It takes a village. It takes a big village. And that village will change over time. Can't expect everyone to stay. Everybody has a threshold. Don't take it personal. It's not that deep sometimes. Go to trainings. Go to trainings for whatever it is that you're trying to do. If you're trying to do something around housing, go to housing related trainings. If you have a coalition for housing in your state, town, go talk to them, go meet them. Just try to be around that sector as much as you possibly can, because you'll learn a lot, but you'll also learn about the culture in that specific sector, because you can think of nonprofits as a whole, but you also have to understand that as in any community there are pockets. So the human service is its own pocket, but then within the human service pocket, there's the housing pocket, there's the DV pocket, and so on and so forth. Then in the other, there are the arts nonprofits, there are the youth arts nonprofits, and then there are the adult art nonprofits, and so on and so forth. Find that pocket. But also don't be afraid to partner with people. That was a big thing for me when we started House of Codec. I refused to just be like, we're the only ones doing this thing. We are the only ones that can provide the service. We're the only one this, we're the only one that. I'm like, fuck that. There's a nonprofit down the road that has been doing this work or this service that I need for the last 50 years. Why don't I call them up and be like, hey, can we partner? And maybe you can help these kids get their records expunged. Shout out to there. For being such a huge advocate and partnering with us on that. And then I also work in drug and overdose and sexual overdose prevention still over at AIDS Care Ocean State, where I am a rapid HIV tester, and I also help with the needle exchange program. So also connecting people with recovery services has been huge, whether it is through places like Project Renew or other sober houses and stuff like that. We are big on mental health, and from all aspects, the mental health of our young people, but also the mental health of us, the people who are doing the work. We experience a lot of vicarious trauma. If you don't know what vicarious trauma is, it's technically the experience of somebody else's trauma. So me being with a client who is telling me their story of trauma, that's vicarious trauma, because now I'm hearing all of that stuff that they went through, And in my brain, I'm just like, how are you still standing? And now how am I still standing after hearing all of this? And now I'm also supposed to help you through this process. So self-care is also incredibly important. Boundaries will be your best friend.
How do you set healthy boundaries for yourself?
For myself, when we first started this, I had none. Zero.
How quickly did that burn out?
Oh my God. Maybe 6 months in. So by May of 2022, I was just like, what the hell? Bro. Bro or girl, what's up? Why?
Folks.
Yeah, like, and also like, folks, everyone, humans. This is the thing that I say all the time when I walk in through the door and like all the kids are in the living room, like, hello, humans. Like, if you watch Bob's Burgers, when like, what's his name? Mr. Fish order comes in and is like, hello, burger people. I'm like, hello, humans. So I didn't set healthy boundaries for myself until I stepped into the role full time. Because at this time of starting Haus of Codec, I was working a full-time job at the Miriam Hospital. And it wasn't until July of 2022 that I quit that job. Well, May of 2022 that I quit that job and became the full-time executive director at Haus of Codec in July of that same year. Took a month wiggle. I needed that. But there were very little boundaries, and specifically when there's a small team, there are very little boundaries, unfortunately, and that will cause its own set of issues. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. It will. But now, some of my boundaries look like, your emergency is not mine, unless the house is burning. If the house is burning, yeah, I'll get all shaken up. But I have always been the person of like, if shit is chaos around me, I'm gonna be very like. But in reality, there's a whole lot of chaos happening up here and in here. But like, and also like staying calm in really tough and stressful situations is a skill that you build, not a skill that you're born with. So if you're always like, why did I react that way in a situation? It's just like, because that's the skill that you had at that time. But as you go down that road, you'll learn that skill will eventually evolve. Like, you'll eventually realize of like, I can't continue to do that like that. So there are times where I have to remind myself like, no, my boundary is that I'm not doing that. And I'm not saying that you need to do this, but this is just a thing that I do. Sometimes I need to set boundaries so harshly that I tell no one. Or like, I set a boundary and then I don't tell someone that I set up that boundary until it comes up. Because if it's not necessary, why would I say anything? Like, I'm like, hello world, here's my laundry list of boundaries. Don't push it. No. But it's just like, if it comes up, it's going to come up and I'm going to talk about it. But like, I try very hard not to work past a certain amount of hours. As an executive director and as anyone in nonprofit, you are bound to work more than 40 hours. There are times that I work like 60. Gosh, maybe 80 a week. It's got to be tough. It's got to be very tough. And that's when that PTO comes, if you have it, obviously, because again, doing this work for so long, I didn't have proper PTO until like late 2022, maybe almost early 2023. And but as you are in the building period, make sure that communication is like as active as possible. And be understanding. It's like, again, the listening we don't judge thing is like, be understanding of other people's communication style and communication style and learning styles. Not everybody learns the same. Not everybody listens the same or talks the same. you can have a common understanding, and everybody's gonna interpret that common understanding in their very own unique ways, while holding that common understanding. Just don't like go and also like if you're doing something as a collective, don't do something that can then also like damage the rest of the collective, because that's when like once there is fringe which inside of the collective, it can quickly kind of fall apart. And if you're doing something as important as housing, you need to at one point come to the understanding of like, is this important, or is my beef with this client important? And I just hope that you choose the bigger picture.
Yeah. How do you avoid like stepping on each other's toes? You know, like you and Jem, and you have another person that runs the House of Codec, and you both have overlapping duties. Yeah. How do you if you guys have a conflict, you want to do it one way, you want to do another.
It's bound to happen. It's also bound to happen. I can try and want to avoid it as much as possible, but it's just bound to happen. And specifically when you're in, like, we are a team of 4 full-time people. I include myself, then 2 part-timers, and then we have 2 contractors. So it's a very small team, bound to piggyback, bound to step on each other's toes, unfortunately. And there's a lot of back and forth that happens. I'm big on like, let's have a conversation thoroughly about something before we jump into a decision or an action. And sometimes, yes, like in moments where like when we don't communicate effectively, where like I do something and then I didn't communicate that I was doing that thing, then the other person goes and does that thing, and now 2 people have done the same thing twice. That doesn't feel good sometimes. So like we have huddle every morning where we talk about what people are doing on that day, and then we have staff meetings once a week where we just talk about like the bigger grand scheme of things. But stepping on each other's toes is bound to happen, and once we recognize that something has happened, we make boundaries. So and it's easier said than done.
Yes.
Salud. Again, this is so good. I'm just gonna hold it.
Good. Yeah, savor it, please.
Like separately, like not like we'll probably put this, but like when you're talking about your huddles, it reminds me of like my job. I do software, and we do like a stand up where we like just walk through the day. Like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do today. So like someone hears that like, oh, I'm gonna do that too. Now they take it off their list. Like, oh, I'm supposed to have to do that too. So,
yeah, that's the huddle thing model that is something I took from when I used to work at Miriam. It was something I like when I was stationed at the clinics. That depending on the provider that was there, I will always have to participate in some type of like conversation with them, because the provider will have to tell me this patient, and this patient are eligible for X study. This patient, and that patient are eligible for Y study. You know, and things like that. So like we had to converse about how the shift was going to go, because I wasn't at the clinic like my entire day. I will be at the clinic from like 9 a.m. until like 1. And then at 1, I would either go to the office. I mostly work remotely that entire time. So I would likely just go back home. But if I had to go to another clinic, I would just then go to the clinic directly from like, so in towards the end of my time at Miriam, it was like that, where I would be at the immunology SGI clinic. And then from there, I would have to go to the Hasbro adolescent and gender clinic, which I loved both places very, very much. Very different environments, obviously, because one's treating adults and the other one's treating young adults and teenagers. But that model of like conversing about like, here's how the shift is going to go, can really like, even if you're not going to be in the same space, it's good to know what everyone's doing. And it is my job to know what everyone's doing as well. But I'm grateful for everyone that's part of House of Codec right now. Like it again, it takes a village. And if you are the steward of your group, don't be egocentrical. Don't be selfish. I mean, you can be selfish just a little bit, just the right amount. But also, you have to understand that like people are human, and like human things will happen. Like, you need a mental health day today? Cool. Go take a walk around the park. Go touch some grass. It's cool, especially if it's warm outside. Oh, it's so great. If it's as frigid as it is right now, don't do it. Don't go outside like that. At least bundle up. I play Pokemon Go all the time, and my therapist wants me to take more walks, and I'm just like, but it's so cold outside. And I'm just like, I'll let Pokemon Go fuel my desire to go and walk in 25-degree weather.
I love that motivation. That's so
Yeah.
smart.
So.
To zoom in on your socks.
Oh yeah, I have Pokemon socks. Yeah. So yeah, that's, I guess, my long-winded advice, I guess, that I have for anyone that wants to do something similar. And also, I have to be 100% honest. Like, I will be a complete, what's the word? I guess I would not be true to myself if I also didn't say that. Like, the answer might not be a nonprofit.
Put your feet up if you're going to be more comfortable.
It's okay. The answer is not always a nonprofit. So whatever it is that you want to try and do might not fit the spectrum of a nonprofit.
Yeah.
That's for
Can
you
I
to
ask
decide.
another
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to keep you like that longer. Do you have how many questions do you have left? We don't want to keep you too long. I'll let you guys. Yeah, you get to.
I have a few.
We're at 52 minutes, just so you know.
Okay. You know what also I'm going to do? I'm going to send you the whole file uncut, and whatever you don't want to use, I'll cut and then go from there. Does that sound like a better way to do it? Yeah.
Whatever works.
Whatever you want.
I think, yeah. All right.
Cool.
So, anywhoozle.
Yay.
You have a special relationship to music. You are a renowned, I don't want to call you a DJ because it's more than that. Yeah. Nonetheless, you create experiences for people that center around music. Does your background as a multimedia artist intersect with your queer youth advocacy work?
100%. Yeah. I think specifically back to my days in high school, where I was that kid in high school that I wanted to do as many after school activities as possible. I did hip hop dancing twice. I did a DJ workshop 3 times. I did a video game workshop for 1 semester. I did a public speaking workshop for also 1 semester. I'm not the proudest of this one, but I went to the period at AS220 Youth where you are between a prospective member and then a full member. I don't know. I don't even remember if I even filed the paperwork at AS220 Youth, but I remember spending a whole week at AS220 Youth and just having so much fun. And there were so many things from fashion photography to music and poetry and all that stuff, and it was so cool. The reason why I care so much about this mediums is because young people really care about that. Like, I'm sure, like, both of you or anyone listening, what were you doing when you were 14? I mean, I'm sure a lot, but I'm sure you were also listening to a lot of music. See, so like, it's like that thing that like helps drive you, that, you know, like, believe it or not, like helps people get a little hope sometimes. So, and even better, allowing them to make that thing, or allowing them to express themselves in whatever ways artistically that they want to, is incredibly important for one's survival and mental health and just being. Because through my art and mostly through my art visually is how I really came to I guess my fruition of being a fully out queer person, because I explore a lot of queer themes through my photography and my digital art and my videos, and I'm a huge Lady Gaga fan. Huge. And art pop is my baby. So if I catch you saying anything bad about art pop, you out there, We're gonna have a chat because I love art pop. And that album, I remember when it came out, it was so poorly received, but at the same time, I was just like, this is absolutely chaos, and I love every second of it. Like, I am a 16-year-old kid in 2013 listening to dubstep and Skrillex. Like, I'm angsty as hell. And then all of a sudden, here comes this, like, very bright Lady Gaga album. I was just like, what? Like, and that's one of those musical moments that I can remember of, like, that I attached to my queer timeline. Like, one of those moments of, like, yeah, I'm gay. You know? And it's moments like that, like, allowing young people to like what they like, you know, is really important. Obviously, like, if it's something that societally it's, you know, morally not cool, have a conversation with that young person about it rather than being like, fuck you. Like, why do you like that? Why are you so racist? Why like that? Like, sometimes young people, specifically, like, when they're 18, like, this is the time of mistakes. So it's big time. And I think it's very vital for programs like the Institute 20 Youth Program and New Urban Arts and City Arts for Youth. And these are all nonprofits that I adore. And PASA, the Providence After School Alliance, shout out to y'all. You know, like, there's experiences that help specifically, like, inner city youth, like youth of any sexual identity that live in the South Side and the West End. Like, sometimes the choice is, do I better myself or drugs? You know, that's like, there are so many different ways now of paths, but, you know, like, at a time not too long ago, that's what the path was. So allowing people to express themselves in authentic ways, in authentic and uncomfortable ways, because expressing yourself is not always the most comfortable thing to do. It's still important, though, because at the end of that uncomfortability, guess what comes? Relief. And being able to go into a space nervous and walk out of it with 2 new friends, that's huge. It's really huge, in my opinion. So
100%.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
It does, for sure. What advice would you give someone looking to combine advocacy with creativity?
Let your advocacy show through your creativity. And it doesn't have to be visually. It can be in writing. Because if I were to show you some of my photography specifically that I explore the relationship with queerness and men, quite honestly, because growing up in the Dominican household, like, everybody's like, oh, if you're gay, you must be effeminate. And it's just like, not quite. So it's like, specifically with my queer friends of color and my trans queer friends of color, like, who are male presenting, like, how do you show up in your queerness? Is that in a crop top or in a fur jacket and a jockstrap? Like, what is that for you? So it's almost like begging the question of, like, what makes you feel sexy? But when you look at that, it's just, when you look at those images, and this is actually something that someone who was viewing my work was saying, was that why aren't this just like mock-up covers of, like, I don't know, a porn magazine? And I'm just like, because that's not what my intention was. And if it was, then what? But also, when they went to read my artist statement, they were like, oh, I understand now. So that meaning like, you have to also explain meaning sometimes. Like, it's not immediately, like, grasped. So letting your desire and love for whatever it is that you want to advocate for show through your work, through your art, in whatever ways you want it to be. It can be in so many different ways. Could be visually, in writing, in the way that in the way that you present your work, in the way that you talk about the work, in the way that you post about your work, is whatever it is that you want to do. One of the most common ways, for example, is doing doing commissions for to raise funds for something. Like, that's a way that things can show up like that. It's an example that shows up right now for me is from my friend Jordan C. Berry. Shout out, Jordan. He dropped out of RISD to go and work with DARE in Providence. And throughout that time, he made portraits for the families that were affected by gun violence here in Providence. And he was all over the news. It was amazing. It was beautiful to watch. And now, years down the road in my art career, I have gotten to know him very personally, and I just like love being around that human. And you know, that's a way that can be done. I mean, like, if you're going to school and you really want school, I mean, school's not for everyone. But like, you can do so many things. That's also like what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't have to be a nonprofit. This is just the way that it's showing up for me. For you, it can be partnering with an already existing nonprofit or a collective of some type. Not all advocacy campaigns and groups are behind a nonprofit. Sometimes it's just a collective, an LLC, some type of official business. And sometimes it's just a group of people, and that is okay. A documentary documenting a time and place of advocacy happening is you kind of like immortalizing that, because once you record that and once you make that available and accessible, let's say in the queer archives, the Providence Public Library, that's gonna be preserved, and that's gonna be there for a long time. To say is that, like, you can do with your art what your heart desires, and you don't have to know it right away. There's such a giant vast of different things that you can do. Do a little exploring. It's cool too.
Any hoozle. As someone who works with their romantic partner professionally and is in a successful, loving relationship, what advice would you give someone heading down that road?
My first knee-jerk reaction is don't. But if he works, he works. If he works, he works. My partner and I, we went through a cross-country road trip back from Rhode Island to California and back in 2 weeks. And you want to know the worst part? I don't drive.
So that was very hard.
So
It is a miracle you survived that.
we survived that in all of the senses, in our physical life, in our souls, and our relationship. If your partner and you can go through something like that, it's meant to be. People always are like, let's go to IKEA together. And if we come out of IKEA still together, it's meant to be. It's literally that. I did go to IKEA for the first time around this time in 2024. And my partner was like, I'm so nervous going to IKEA. Why like this? I'm like, we're literally going to a furniture store. How hard can it be? Literally, that was like my face in response to that. Like, how hard can it be? And I walk in and I'm like, oh, this is overwhelming. There's so much going on. And then nobody knows any sense of space. Oh my God. And then, like, we want this, but then we want that, but then we want this, and we want that. I'm like, I'm very easygoing. I have so much patience. And it's like, okay, cool, you want this? Oh, you don't want that anymore? Okay. I just want a couch. That's all I want. A couch to sit on.
It's all about the give and take, right?
Yeah. Choose your battles. Communication is incredibly important. In fact, it is the most important things. Communication should be at your number one list of important things for your partner and you. Even if you're not trying to professionally work together. Communication is the key to any relationship, and is even more key to a relationship that is also trying to blend in the romantic relationship and the professional relationship together. There are bound to be disagreements. There are bound to be fights. There are bound to be arguments. It's human. That's part of just being a human. It's okay. If you're fighting about work, make sure that at one point throughout that fight, you both stop to recognize that you're fighting about work and not about each other. That's incredibly important. That's been massively important for me and Jam. Because sometimes we are like yelling at each other about work stuff, and it's just like, wait, why are you yelling? What do I do? And it's like, no, I'm just yelling about work. I'm like, oh, okay. It's important to recognize, like, if you're fighting about something that happened in the relationship, make sure that that's understood. Like, don't, like, if someone did something at work that you didn't like, talk about it at work if you can. Address it at work if you can. Sometimes things happen that can't be addressed right away. Sometimes you need to sit with whatever just happened and address it a little bit later. But it should be a motto to like try to address something before sundown per se. If you two live together specifically, don't go to bed angry at each other. Don't do it. Talk about it. Fuck.
That was great.
Thank you. Talk about it. Don't go to bed mad at each other. It's just not cool. Have I done it? 100%. It's bound to happen. Anything is bound to happen. But communication is incredibly important. If you both are not in your own respective therapy, get yourself a therapist if you can. Your friends are not your therapist. Your partner is not your therapist. Professionals that went to school to get the license to learn about human behavior are the people that are there to help you. That's also something that also needs to be understood for any relationship. Whether it's a work relationship or a friendship or a romantic partnership. It's very important. And I think the last thing that I can say is that try to keep each other in check as best as possible. It will be hard. A mistake is bound to happen. Just allow yourself as much grace as you possibly can as well.
The housing crisis in Rhode Island is very real. There are people dying on the streets, literally freezing to death in the temperatures Rhode Island has experienced lately. For someone looking to get involved in being a part of the solution, where do you recommend folks start?
Honestly, right now, I think the warming center, the warming shelter at the City Hall needs a lot of help. Whether it is that you help buy hand warmers, or you help buy things to make hot chocolate, or you just volunteer your time and your body. And I say it very strategically like that because volunteering or working and doing the work at a space where people are actively homeless and experiencing housing insecurity, things can become a little dangerous. And I'm not saying that to deter you from helping. I'm saying that because it's real. It's a reality. It's a very big reality. Right now, I think the warming center at the City Hall could use a lot of help. Check in with, I guess, your local nonprofits about what they need. Every housing organization's needs are very different. Like what I need might not be what the other nonprofit next door needs. For an organization like House of Codec, what we need right now is for people to get involved, I guess, in whatever ways that they can. Getting involved can look in so many different ways. Volunteering in our emergency shelter, volunteering for our events, volunteering to help us do some clerical stuff. What else? Gosh, it could be anything. Like, there are so many possibilities as to what you can do. But when it comes to the specific issue at hand of being so cold and there not being enough beds in Rhode Island, pop-up warming centers are popping up. Those places will need a lot of help, either monetarily or with physical power or even amenities. Some of these places might not have, for example, like the city hall. Like, the city hall is not a place meant for habitation, so there isn't really a shower there. So now what happens? There's this. I hope that they are working in this way, but there's this thing from House of Hope. Shout out to House of Hope. That's called Shower to Empower. They go throughout the state to allow homeless people to shower, and they usually park over on Cranston Street on Fridays, and those folks are so happy, as much as they are very, like, in a very big hardship. Just the ability to go into a space and be able to shower is just life changing, quite honestly. And again, the warming shelters will likely need the most help right now. Again, whether it is monetarily or it is with physical power. For an organization like House of Codec, money always helps. We have a food pantry. We have a clothing pantry. Our food pantry, we are trying to constantly keep it stocked, and it usually always is. But sometimes things run out. So if you want to make canned good donations, that's available. We are what else? My God, there's so many things. If you're like, I know how to do this life skill thing, and I do it, and I teach people how to do this life skill thing for a living, reach out to me. I love connecting people, but also I love when an opportunity shows up where the young clients that we're serving can learn a new skill. And yeah, like, they're again, very directly, the warming shelters, go see what they're doing, go see what they need help with. For an organization like House of Codec, reach out and see what we might specifically need help with. We have a wish list on Amazon that you can take a look at. Those are things that young people have either told us that they need, or those are things that we have deemed that are necessary to continue to run the space. And some of those things might look like buying us toilet paper, or paper towels, or buying us a set of, like, hoodies and jackets and things like that. So yeah, but again, money always helps. Yeah. If you can.
Yeah. What is something you would tell a young person who is just figuring out who they are?
Gosh, you gotta make me cry.
Or any person.
It's gonna be okay. Even when you don't think it will be okay. It will get sorted out. It will get figured out. It will. The universe works in mysterious ways. You are who you are for a reason. You might not know that today or tomorrow, but you might know it the next day. Don't rush it. If you try to rush it, some irreparable mistakes could happen. But at the same time, look at yourself and not at others. If you're a young person specifically, be you. Don't try to be like, John over there is in this way, and I want to be like John. You can aspire to be like someone, but at the end of the day, you are you, and you're not John. And John is that way because that's his personality or their personality. But what is you in your wonderfulness, non-binariness, transness, or just queerness in general, what does that look like for you? Those are questions that are important to ask yourself as well. It's cool to be introspective and reflective sometimes. Don't let it get too far though, because once you start asking yourself all those questions, you go down this rabbit hole. I've been there. Excuse me.
In therapy, not alone.
Yeah, doing a therapy, not alone. Like if you do have an active therapist and you're seeking, like, and some of those questions come up, try to unravel that with them. Think about it like a ball of yarn. How do you get to the middle? How do you get to the middle of that ball of yarn? And are you ready to find out what's at the middle of the ball of yarn? It might not, for you, it might not even be a ball of yarn. It might be one of those jawbreakers. Who knows? But all I have to say to you is that I can tell you what to do. But what I can tell you is that it will be okay. It really will. And if it isn't, you can call me and cuss me out. But it will be okay. There was a time where I didn't think I was gonna make it, or that I was going to be anything good in life, or that I was going to, quite honestly, just do anything with my life. I didn't think. What does this young boy from Dominican Republic have to offer? You know, those are questions that I did ask myself growing up, and now look at what I'm doing.
The headmaster.
Everything is written, but everything is not written in stone. I am a board member at this wonderful, magnificent, brand new queer art gallery called Grid Gallery here in Providence. It's spelled GRID, like literal grid. We are on Wickenden Street. If you are familiar with Earth Tones, also shout out to my friends at Earth Tones, you will be able to find us because we are like technically right behind their space. We are a LGBTQ plus BIPOC ran gallery space for specifically BIPOC LGBTQ photographers. So what that means is also that gallery space is kind of like the first of its kind in the country. We specifically showcase the works of people who are anywhere in the LGBTQ spectrum that also identify somewhere in the BIPOC spectrum, and or diaspora, whatever you would like to refer it as. And we try to make sure that it's accessible, not just for the viewer, but also for the artist. Showing artwork in a gallery can be very expensive. So as a nonprofit gallery, we try to build ways and connect people to ways that we can make their shows, if they're showing, be a little bit more cost effective. So that's one thing I do. Some of you might know of Pechakacha. Shout out to my friends over at Pechakacha. It means chit chat in Japanese. This is it happens once a month. There's a theme that happens every month, and people get to interpret that month in that theme in whatever ways they want. And then they get 20 images, 20 seconds, and they just talk. It's cool. It's really, really, really cool. Come through. It happens in a different place every month, so we don't have a fixed place. So we try to be all over the place. It's also really cool. Shout out to the DIY scene in Providence, doing all the things, keeping the city alive. RIP to all the DIY spaces that we've lost in the last year. And listen to Dusk Night. That is DUSKNIGHT on any music platform. That is me.
Cute.
Bye.
Crying out loud.